Hey folks, welcome into Pro Football Ireland as we get even closer to training camp, which sounds weird almost saying that we're almost there. We're continuing to look at sort of the last few months in the league and what we have coming ahead on Pro Football Ireland, and delighted not just to be joined by Mark Hogan, but also to be joined from NFL Network, from NFL Media, Cynthia Frelund. Cynthia, it's good to see you again. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you. Great to see you. Happy off season. When you were saying that, I'm like, oh, in like 4 Mondays, we will be on the eve of training camps, and 4 Mondays. That's it, as we say here.
As we say in Ireland, it's scary biscuits. It really, really is, and it's going to be great fun. Obviously, it's a huge season. We've got Vegas coming up at the end of it as well, which is going to be really, really good fun. How have you found the off season? Because for me, Cynthia, it seems like we were in Phoenix 20 minutes ago, which is scary.
Yes, we were in Phoenix 20 minutes ago. The draft was 5 minutes ago, and now there's still some big names out there. I mean, I feel like this is the first, obviously in America, the 4th of July is like a big, mile marker. And I feel like, it's kind of when the entire league takes off, at least for 1 week. And, as we round near the 4th of July, this is kind of the first time that I can remember that we have like someone with a name like DeAndre Hopkins and, Dalvin Cook and even Ezekiel Elliott, like all this many big names still unsure of what we're going to see from them or where or how or when or any of it. So I feel like we're getting even more uncertain this year than at least I can remember.
It's so funny you say that, Cynthia, because the last few years, whether for better or worse, like last year, it was Deshaun Watson was obviously dominated the offseason. Whether it was Brady's retirement was in there. The year before, we actually had Aaron Rodgers and a bit more Deshaun Watson. Before that was COVID. This year, I think we all, especially if you're covering the league, these last few months, it actually has seemed way more quiet. Maybe this is what we were used to before COVID. I don't even know. Even to say, like you're saying, like DeAndre Hopkins, it's not a massive trade that gets through. He just gets released, and we talk about it for a few days, and then it just sits there and sits there and sits there. What has been the biggest? What is this off-season storyline? And hopefully, we won't get into an Aaron Rodgers talk straight off the back, but that's what it's going to be remembered for, right?
I think so. I mean, part of it is you're seeing sort of like the confluence of a couple of things happening, and there's like a bubble that happened in college, and now we're starting to see that kind of ripple out into the league. Meaning we had, obviously COVID made things weird from, recruiting was very different for colleges, and then therefore the draft was different and what we knew about players. And then NIL, which meant players stay in the league in the college ranks longer because now they can receive payment for their appearances. And then you also, at the same time, you have the transfer portal happens in college too now. So these guys, if they're not happy where they're playing, they can go somewhere else pretty easily. So when you're looking at all those different things happening, that's the supply from which we draw our players. And now you're starting to see that come out. And then, when I'm thinking about it, like this is the first class in about 3 where wide receivers haven't been the depth of wide receivers in the draft class hasn't been anywhere near what it had been in the previous few seasons. So you're starting to see like a lot of these things play themselves out a little bit. So we're kind of like, popping some bubble. And I think that's part of it. But I also think that, look, like the salary cap went up, they went up 8%. But if you're looking at quarterback salaries, they're going up faster than 8%. So you're actually not getting this huge explosion in terms of being able to pay everyone. So it's kind of all of these things all at once. It was a little more than 8%, but 8 point something percent was it.
It's funny because like you're talking about numbers, and one of the biggest things in the off-season content filler, Cynthia, seems to be the strength of schedule. Everyone talks about it even before the schedule comes out. How much do you play into that, or is it just like, look, it's the content at the time? Because for me, like now, it's like, no, I can't, because when that first game happens, like that's it, yeah.
Well, look, some of it does matter. Like, for example, the Arizona Cardinals, like Kyler Murray is not going to start the season. How many games are we going to wait until we have Kyler Murray play? That actually makes things that could have some ramifications when it comes to things like the order of the NFC West, right? So there are some things, but to me, those are like, that's whenever you have an injury, if you have an injury week 1 or you have an injury week 16, it's gonna come into play in terms of how that nets out. You always want your full squad, all 53 of your strongest players on the field. Doesn't ever work out like that. But I do think there's some things about the schedule, like, having really back to back, like a lot of travel, or back to back really hard teams, or even back to back a different type of quarterback. If you go from like a Lamar Jackson one week to a Patrick Mahomes the next, like it is very hard on your defense. So, there are some things, but I do think like maybe we make a little bit too much. I mean, maybe we make just a smidge too much about it. But at the end of the day, there are some things that do matter. And that fourth place schedule now that we've added the 17th game, remember your fourth place schedule now gets you another fourth place person from a different division. It's not as equal as it might seem. So that means a team like the Falcons, who finished in the fourth place schedule despite the NFC being almost a wash, like the difference between first and fourth was like not very much, right? So they now get an extra fourth place team in the next season. But again, once we've seen all this different movement, does fourth place even matter anymore? Because wouldn't you say the Jets are completely different than they were last season? And that's a play, like now you're like, great, thanks. I get to play the third place. Awesome. Like good for me. So, yes and no, right? It's good to know. Then you can buy your tickets, you can plan your trips and, and figure out your whole life around the football season, of course, because that's what everyone does, right?
Oh, it's especially over here. You don't know how exciting it is when that schedule comes out to be able to dream about where you're off to in the wintertime when it's cold over here and you're a Cardinals fan over there. But one of the places I will put a bit of stock when it comes to, I suppose, the over-unders with the teams is there is this lovely window of 9.5 win teams that I think are very well done by Vegas, I suppose. And it includes names like the Jets, the Dolphins, the Cowboys, the Chargers. And you can see it going either way because, when you're talking about strength of schedule and say in the AFC East division with the Jets and Dolphins, but you are from Michigan, so I'll cue a different team in here. The Detroit Lions are sitting around there. Their free agency was amazing. I loved what they did with the defensive back units. Then they come in with the draft, and because of lack of value or perceived value, they were given a knock, even though they got starters galore and the likes of Jamar Gibbs and that. You are from Michigan, so that's why I wanted to ask you, are they going to be able to back it up? Or, I mean, it looks like they got better on paper.
I mean, I haven't been alive for them to win a playoff game, and they've made it to the playoffs, but never as the division like winner. So I don't know. Maybe it's my fault for being alive that they just won't like make it there. But if you're a Lions fan and you truly know anything about being a Lions fan, you're self-loathing. Like I saw Jalen Rose the other day and we were both talking about it, and he's like, they're going to find a way to mess us up. And I'm like, that is what my heart says. But my math says that they will win the division. But my heart is like, oh God, like somebody wake me up when that's over. Like, can we just not watch? Like, it's so something weird's going to happen. I mean, I hope that they manage to pull it off, because if there were a season to do it, getting that guy Rodgers out of the division is probably the best season to do it in. So, I mean, I hope so, but I'm not. I would never. If I work for the NFL, we're not allowed to bet. But if I were allowed to bet, I could never make that bet, just because my heart. If you were a Lions fan, you get your heart ripped out. It's just the way it works.
If you're a Mayo fan, Michael, I'm going to bring it up already. Over here, we have our Gaelic games, Cynthia, and the Mayo is the team that this year it's going to be their year for the 100th year. It's going to be their.
This is going to go out next week. This podcast is going to go out 4th of July week, and they could be out, Mark. Who knows? Technically, just putting the asterisks in there.
But you know what? Yeah, you're so right with the NFC North, because it is so competitive. And the other team, I suppose, the Chicago Bears, to me, I think have gotten a lot better this year. We don't know what to get out of Justin Fields. I am certainly a believer. But last year, and I only stumbled across this earlier on doing something completely random, they had the weakest passing game last year since 2011, when there was obviously fewer games. Cole Kmet was their leading receiver. He was ranked 71st in the league. You added the likes of a DJ Moore to that team. You have Dante Foreman in the running back, all this kind of stuff. And Justin Fields won't have to do as much. I like them on paper. Do you think that we could see a jump out of them, or is it going to take another couple of years?
I think we'll see a jump out of them. I mean, obviously, where they were picking last year, where they were slated to pick last year, means they're not so great. But they did a nice job this offseason for sure. I really like Justin Fields. It's hard when your O-line lets you down. It's really hard to be good no matter who you are. And with that passing game, they need a lot of help. I loved the addition. However, it's going to be hard for me in this season with their, I like their secondary. I don't love it. I don't know what's going on with their pass rush. don't love that either. And when you don't have like the strongest secondary, you don't have the strongest pass rush, your defense becomes a little bit more of a liability. So I'm confused what I'm going to see I think they take a big jump, for sure, a big jump, but I'm not sure if it's going to be like an NFC North winning leap. I think it's going to be more of like a night, like they could double the number of wins they had last season and still not win the division. So, that's going to be an interesting one. But you did talk about the Chargers right in the middle of the pack with the 9.5 wins forecast. And on paper, see, they're another one where I feel like my math and my heart get conflicted because they're on paper, they're so good. And they have the most important thing, which is the quarterback. They've got a great one. And yet somehow it doesn't seem to work out. Like something weird seems to happen with them every single year. And I think the Raiders are in a bit of a rebuild. And I don't know if I think that the Broncos are going to surprise that many people. I think that they're going to be a lot better, but I don't think that there's even with Sean Payton, who's a masterful coach. I'm confused about Russell Wilson. And once I see that, so the Chargers could be in great position. It seems like this is going to be a team that takes a really nice step into the postseason, but for whatever reason, maybe it's my fault. I live in Southern California now. Like maybe it could be my fault. Who knows? Jinxing them. Although the Rams won the Super Bowl and I lived here, so I don't know. It's hard to say.
Yeah, give yourself a break. Come on. So, it's so funny that you came in with the Chargers there because I'm high on the Chargers, but I had to rework the question after a couple of weeks ago. I put it to Mina Kimes. Who would you rather be a fan of over the next maybe 5 years, the LA Chargers or the Chicago Bears? And Mina was saying how, well, you have to go with the quarterback with Justin Herbert, but I'm kind of with you that and we had Tom Telesco on recently and I was praising the strength of the roster, but for whatever reason, they haven't been able to get over the hump. I think I would side with being a Chicago Bears fan. Would you go for LA Chargers or Chicago Bears?
Well, okay, so I'm a little biased because the
GM.
Okay. I'm a little biased because the GM of the Bears is I went to college with him, so and I've done a really good.
I thought it was going to be that you're a Detroit Lions fan as a younger person. You couldn't swap allegiances.
No. I'm just I think Ryan Poles has done a really masterful job, but I think that Justin Herbert's a better quarterback than Justin Fields overall, but I do think as far as who's going to have more wins and who I'd rather be a fan of over the next 5 seasons, I would probably pick the Bears because it feels like over the next few years, you're going to be able to get better pass rushers in free agency and with the draft than you are to be able to rely on, a quarterback. And again, the Chargers are confusing. Great team, great colors, great quarterback, lots of really good pieces. Love Derwin James. No idea, but how do they not win more? I don't know. I don't know. Something crazy.
I thought you weren't I have to side with Mark. I thought you were going to mention the Lions there as the bias, but also I thought you were going to mention the fact that where you work is literally 400 meters from the field where the Chargers play as well. So that was going to be the different thing. But
yeah,
it's mad how close it is when you're actually standing there. It's ridiculous. Everyone's been talking about Aaron Rodgers all off season, and that, look, to be fair, even for us when we're trying to get content out, and I can imagine when you're on TV, it's a whole different ball game, obviously. But it seems like I just imagine it now, Cynthia. It's September the 10th. It's 2 or 3 o'clock our time, and NFL GameDay is on for the first time in the season. And something tells me that Jordan Love going up against the Bears is going to be one of the biggest stories of the day. Is Jordan Love going to make it in Green Bay? That's the $1 million question.
I think if we knew the answer to that, I think even if, the coach, I think if Matt LaFleur even knew the answer to that, then it would be easier. I don't even as good, bad. We don't even really know. I haven't heard a lot coming out of there. In fact, I've heard a lot, but a lot of conflicting things, right? I haven't heard a lot that I believe, let's put it that way, coming out of the Packers camp. We'll have to see what happens. Training camp will give us a better estimation of what we're going to be seeing, but I haven't heard a lot that I believe. And I don't think we have a good answer. I just don't, no one knows. And it's not it's not the same way no one knew about Aaron Rodgers when he was coming out. When we talk about Jordan Love, he didn't, it was so different. College was so different when Aaron Rodgers was playing. Remember, when you play at Berkeley and then you sit back in those days, and Aaron Rodgers and I are the same age, so I can say this, back in our day, when you sit for the amount of time, the style of play wasn't so dramatically different. Well, now Jordan Love played in a system that's quite different than the one I would imagine they're going to be trying to execute in Green Bay. So not only have you sat, but you're also sitting and then expected to learn something different. So I don't know, like that. This one's a big wild card for me because there just aren't a lot of colleges that play an NFL style offense just to begin with. And then I haven't seen what happens when they sit this long. And I don't know if it doesn't seem like Aaron Rodgers was like mentoring Jordan Love in the same way that you saw Alex Smith. Alex Smith really helped Patrick Mahomes out. Like, and by the way, he only sat for a season minus one game. He did play one game his rookie year. So, and Andy Reid is a prolific coach. I'm not ready to call a LaFleur. It's nothing against LaFleur, nothing at all, but he's not prolific. Andy Reid was already a proven prolific coach when Patrick Mahomes sat for 15 games. So not the same thing. We don't know. Like, if anyone knows, you should be playing the lottery, not, pontificating about football. Go do something where you make real money.
Talking about money, I feel like this is the big one. Like, the NFC West is so intriguing because it's like, will the Seahawks take the next jump? Will they fall back a bit because everyone's now had 6 or 7 months to work out genotype? Your predictions has the Rams, correct me if I'm wrong, Cynthia, but you are predicting the Rams are going to win 6.9 average games, right? So 7 games. Niners 10.9, 11 games. Seahawks 9. How close do you think the Niners? How close do you think the Seahawks could take the Niners? Do you think it could be close, or could this be a situation like last year where a team just storms ahead? And I want to apologize to Cardinals fans for not mentioning their team also there.
The Cardinals fans know. They know what's up. But here's what it is. I actually think, so in the States, not that I know this because I know nothing about betting, no idea. There's a bet about who wins the NFC West. And the odds for that are way more favorable for the Seahawks, meaning you get a better return on investment. If I knew anything about gambling, which I don't because I work for the NFL, that would be the way I would go. To me, the Niners have the best defense, no doubt, not even close. And the Niners have the best offensive weapons. Absolutely. No one's doubting me, right? Like this, have I said any lies yet? Nope. Like top to bottom, they're the best. But the question mark is who, when, and how is the quarterback going to play? In fact, just today, I was reading about Brock Purdy traveling down to Florida, so a week ago when this airs, to throw in Jacksonville. And that sounds good, but like, what does that even mean? Like, why is that news? Like, is there some magic, fix your body thing in Jacksonville that doesn't exist in California? Like, no one knows. So, when we do those win totals in May, when the schedule comes out, they will change a lot because the estimations I make there are the best that we have at the time. And the best that we have at the time is that Brock Purdy will be okay. So if I were looking right now, though, and again, I just was, I'm talking about returns on investment. I love what the Seahawks have done. I think the Seahawks they're going to be in a really interesting spot because they've changed their strategy in a really smart way, meaning they started to throw the football more now that they figured out with Geno how to do that. And by the way, people figured Geno out last year. Remember the beginning of the year last season, he started off with those deep passes, had the most deep touchdown passes. Like he had so many through week 10 that nobody caught him by the end of the season with deep touchdown passes. But he started to slow with them, and then they figured something else out. And well, now they add Jackson Smith and Jigba, and now you've got this like triple threat situation where Smith and Jigba didn't really play last season in Ohio State. But if you look at the one prior where he played with Garrett Wilson and he played with Chris Olave, he had the biggest production numbers. And it's not to say he's the best one. It's to say they figured out how that trifecta of receivers worked, which means I would imagine that Shane Waldron, the offensive coordinator, can also figure that out up there in Seattle.
As the resident Cardinals fan, I will step in while we're doing the seeming NFC West preview all of a sudden, and I will jump back to a former player that we have mentioned at the top of the show with DeAndre Hopkins. And I suppose he's obviously gone from the Cardinals now. We know that as we record, he's sitting around in free agency. When you're doing your models, I know that quarterbacks can have an influence. Like, Patrick Mahomes is a 6-win quarterback kind of. Can you assign that number to DeAndre Hopkins, and what's essentially sitting out there on the street right now for a team?
Yeah, DeAndre Hopkins is a very valuable player, in part because his ability in tight windows. So what drives, so let's use for context, like a really good wide receiver can give you like 1.75, like the top end, one Devontae Adams, like these guys, like 1.75, 1.5 wins. It is not as much as a quarterback. We all know this, but it is still a lot. He's right up there in that top echelon. And the thing that really drives that value, one, his ability to come down and win contested catches, those 50-50 balls, they go his way more often than not. Number two, his ability on the perimeter. If you look at him next to the sideline, like he somehow, like there'll be like 4 inches, he'll pull the ball in and like manage to be at the hash somehow. Who knows, right? And he's had not good quarterbacks throwing to him until Kyler, right? Kyler's probably the best quarterback that has thrown to him. And I'm not convinced Kyler's like a prolific thrower. But before that, I don't think I'm not the biggest Deshaun Watson arm fan. Like he's got arm talent, but his scrambling and he's more elusive than he is a pure arm talent is what I believe about him. And then I look at DeAndre Hopkins. I mean, we're not even going to talk about what happened before that, right? So great. We have the ability to win those, and you have the ability for his body in space to just absolutely crush other corners, meaning the top corner will be assigned to him, and that will leave someone else open so that now you have a ton more space for the other receiver. So he's really, really impactful. Put him in a place like it is interesting with the Bill O'Brien return, like with the Pats, like those rumors, that would actually be very helpful. I don't know if I'm DeAndre Hopkins, I don't really want to go to the AFC East because like that's like very hard. Like you're playing 3 of the best other teams in the entire league. Like why would you want to go there? Like if I'm him, I'm calling up Detroit, like not even kidding, right? I'm calling up like one of those places where I can win because I like dubs, right? Like I'm calling the Falcons. Y'all need a receiver down there? Great. Like let me go to the NFC. But again, it's not always about wins, right? It's about like where you're happy. But just for the sake of argument, like he's going to win fewer games if he's a Patriot than if he goes to somewhere else in the NFC.
Yeah, note to self, Michael, I'm gonna have to stop asking these questions about DeAndre Hopkins. That's heartbreaking as a Cardinals fan to listen back to what we're missing out on once more.
It's mad, like, isn't it? It's just this the conversations that we always have. Market always revolves around this and comes to this as well. It was a good crack. Cynthia, I sort of just the final one before I know Mark's gonna ask you for a bold prediction in a second, but just the final one from me. A lot of stuff going on with Buffalo. Just over the last few weeks and months, and I know a few months ago you were talking about the AFC East could be a nightmare division, but could the Bills, just with everything that's going on there, the small things to keep niggling away, could they undo the good work that has been done over the last few years, do you think, this season?
So that's interesting because, I mean, look, you have a top quarterback, you've got a top receiver, you've got a pass rush, you've got all of the discrete pieces. I think last year, if you look at the end of their season last year, they truly were exhausted, right? Like there were too many injuries. They just got, the number, and that happens to teams, right? Like if you saw that game week 1 against the Rams, holy smokes, there was no one that was going to be able to beat that team. Unfortunately, just so many injuries. Now they doubled down and they changed some strategies in terms of their O-line. They added at guard, they added, obviously at tight end in the draft. They got a whole bunch, they got their safeties back, which is ginormous for them, the way that they play. And no more Leslie Frazier means the defense is going to look a little different, but likely be similar. They could. I think that the fact that we're seeing these cracks right now is actually an opportunity for them. Remember, the cracks usually happen like mid-season, and then we hear about it and it's like, oh yeah, like this person was like having a fit on the sideline week 7, and you're like, what happened? So the fact that the cracks are happening now, or like whatever, I don't even know if it's really a crack or not, right? Like Stephon Diggs being allegedly who knows, right? But the truth is whatever happens coming out of training camp, like that's going to set the stage for, because remember last year, they also had like a bunch of devastation in training camp. They had Dawson Knox's brother passed, the whole thing with the kicker. Like there were just so many things that like that team had so many things happen last season that were really, really hard. And now I think that these like what feels like smaller things have a chance to actually bind them back together. So of course they can undo it. It's very easy. Like that chemistry is like so delicate, just in any that's in any locker room. But it's always more fun to win. And they have the schedule that in the beginning feels like they don't have too many of those like crazy hard games right in the beginning. I mean, like what, Bengals, Chiefs, like they're later in the season. They're not right off the top. So, it's like you have a little bit of try to see it. We'll see. I mean, I wish I knew the answer to that. I'll be there for preseason, so I'll see it up close and personal, but I think that they'll get it together. I really do.
Well, there's our social piece right there, so we don't even need to go with this. But I suppose we're so used to your face and predictions during the season. I suppose it's that time of year. Are you sitting on anything that you think would be interesting that you want to put out there on the record?
Yeah, I think we're going to be surprised with the AFC North. Like I think the Steelers are going to sneak some more wins than people think. It's a much better team than what Vegas would have you believe. I think that, look, like, I think everyone and their brother is going to pick some version of like a rematch of last year's Super Bowl, or, it's hard to see the Eagles not doing really well in the NFC, which is crazy, but I think we see some weirdness this year, meaning, that AFC is so tough. And while I believe that, the Chiefs and Patrick Mahomes, I think that they're, to me, very, very good odds of making it to the playoffs. But, when it comes to the NFC, I think we could see some surprises. I think whatever happens in the South could be a surprise. Like, I think the Falcons could surprise and make it to the playoffs just based on their schedule. It's wild, their schedule. Week 1, they get Carolina, right? So who knows? And they're the one, like, they're going with Desmond Ridder. So like we don't know. It's going to be a lot of fun, but I think, like I said, I think the Seahawks could surprise. I think that, the NFC is a lot more up for grabs than I think people think, even though the Eagles are definitely on paper the best team.
Cynthia, it's going to fly in over the next few weeks and months, and obviously we want to wish you luck not only in Buffalo preseason but during the season as well. If you're in London, if you're in Frankfurt, say hello, and hopefully we'll see you in Vegas. And if people want to follow Cynthia on both Twitter and Instagram, we'll put the links in the bio below. And Cynthia, thank you so much for your time. See you soon. Speak to you soon.
Yeah, absolutely. Hope to see you in Vegas and have fun and pick a good. I didn't even actually like. I like the Steelers even without seeing your terrible towel. So there you go. Kind of like,
there we go. It's
hits here clearly because I put down the Cardinals. I apologize.
Well, do you know what we have? If you like that, imagine this.
Ooh.
Oh, have you heard about the Irish connection with the Steelers from this year on? They've made a green terrible towel. I don't know if I've shown it. There you go. How cool is that? Yeah, Ireland only. So you have to come over all the way here to get them. Isn't that the best?
That's very cool.
Isn't that the best? We were very lucky, unfortunate to get them. But the Steelers, of course, have a link to Ireland now. So they came over and they've made a special terrible towel. So if you think the yellow one's cool, hopefully we'll see some more green ones around the place. Perfect.
I didn't know they had special terrible towels for that. So that's super fun.
We will persuade Mark to send one to Touchdown Drive in the post. Cynthia, chat to you soon. Thanks so much.
Yeah, thank you for having me.